And let me tell you, it's no small feat to get that off. Because I had the nut on there, and so when you clamp it with your pair of pliers, you kind of have to hold it over off to the side and clamp it and tighten it down. Now, I haven't taken this off yet, and I'm gonna see here. Oh, look at that. It came off nice and easy. It came off nice and easy. Okay, sometimes it will come off nice and easy if you just do it this way first, but it's always a good thing to try to do it the other way. And maybe it's because this is a number 6, not a number 8 or 10, whereas there's more thread area to mess with. See, but yeah, it'll go on. Okay, I didn't sand off that edge or with the file or anything. It's going. Okay, but if that was hard to get off, you just back and forth like that as you take it off, and you should be able to clean off the threads. Okay. All right, so now I get to put the whole thing back together. I'm actually wondering if I cut not enough off, and I'd rather be too long than too short. But you remember I have 5 screws to work with, 2 doors to mess with. Okay, so if I were to get it too much, let's say, I should be able to get it anyways. Okay, so now I'm going to put that in there. And try to fish it through the rest of the door. Okay, being careful not to mark up my door like that. Okay, and this is the one that I took off from the other door, right? Okay, and now I've got to hold that up there, and I might have to just hold it and screw it from this other side to get it started into that nut. And I think I got it. Okay, but I'm going to back this off just a hair so I don't scratch the door up, right? And before I cinch everything down, see, I've got it way up too high on this side. I don't want to mark the door up any, because the last thing I want is to have to get touch-up paint out or anything, you know? Okay. Okay, so far so good. Now I've got to fish in my other screws, and you remember these screws are going into the wood, and I've got to look at things, and once I get it set up, before I snug it down, if I can move it around, I will, because once I put this scutcheon trim on, I want that bad boy to be right where it needs to be. And I have to do that because the last person who painted this, when we purchased the house many years ago, we had a painter come in here and paint everything. And can you believe he wanted to paint all the doors in place. He masked off all of the door trim on every single door, mind you, and the hinges. He had to mask off the hinges and all that, and he painted all the doors in place. I would never suggest that you do something like that, but this painter, that's what he wanted to do. And so, hey, who am I to tell him what he can and cannot do, right? I guess I could have told him, hey, we want you to pull the doors down, no ifs, ands, or buts. And then he would have said, okay, that's going to cost you X amount of dollars more. And then we would have said, okay, go ahead. Do it the way you want to do it. Okay, I've just got my foot holding the door. And mind you, I still don't know. I'm pretty sure that I have this screw cut the right amount. But what I'm going to do is line it up as though I'm not going to have to take it off. That way I can cinch this exactly where it needs to be. And for worst case scenario, if I have to take the screw out, I will. Okay, and then cut it a little bit, and then get it back on there. I'm getting hot too. It was cold outside this morning, but hey, I don't need to have that scarf on anymore. I don't think. Okay, so I'm gonna look at that. That looks really good, right where it's at. I'm thinking. Okay, and now I'm gonna look on this other side to see how I'm doing. And it looks like this side here has to be swiveled up a little. Isn't that weird? It looks like this one, no, I can't. I can only make it so much, right? In order to have this lined up nice and straight. Okay, but I may have to do some minor adjustments on this. In fact, maybe I'll make that tight, and then I'll just put this back on where it's supposed to be. Look at this, you know, in relation to how everything else is. You know what I mean? And worst case scenario, if I have to do anything, I'll have to slide that down. But I'm not, because of the way these handles are, I want to get both doors done first. Then I'll close the door, look at this one as opposed to the other one next to it, and if it's fine, I'm good to go. If it's not, and if this side needs to go down just a little bit, then I'll pull that off, and I'll have to kind of loosen this one and lower it down just a little bit. But I think it's going to be fine, the amount that I cut off, because I can't even see the threads through that nut yet. And I know that once I start tightening this up, the threads might end up being about flush, and that's about it. And that's exactly how I want it. Okay, and it looks like if anything, this may have to go in just a little bit in order for me to get the escutcheon trim on there. No, I think it's going to fit fine. See there? Once I snap that on, and see this? See all the paint on there? I'm gonna clean all that stuff off. And it's best not to do that with a sheetrock knife or a screwdriver, because now you're starting to scratch that. So I'm gonna have to mess up my fingernail a little bit to get that paint off. Do you see what I mean? Look at all that. That's because they painted these in place. They put the masking tape around there. They didn't do a very good job putting the masking tape on, did they? And if you ever have to adjust your knobs afterwards, they're not going to fit exactly. Or if you ever go to change out your doorknobs, and if your escutcheon trim is not the same as the other ones, then you might see a mark around some of your doorknobs or whatever. But it's not the end of the world. If you barely see that, nobody's really going to see that. If I told you there's 25 doors in this house, and that one of them had a little bit around one of the knobs where it looks like you could see just a hair of the different color paint that was on there or whatever. You wouldn't know exactly where to look. You know what I mean? Okay, so that's all I can do right now for that door. You see what I mean? Until I do this one. Now this one, I'm going to do the same way as that. Remember? This is the one. This was the one that was kind of messed up. And see, I held it like that and hit it with the hammer. See how it's almost lined up now? Okay? And that one's going to go over on this side. In fact, I had told you incorrectly that this piece that was broken, that was mashed, is actually going to be on the inside on this one. And it was on the inside of this one over here. I thought it was on that one when I took it off, but I was incorrect. As she jerked it and jerked it and jerked it, that last time she pulled the door handle off that way from here, rather than this time it started loosening up from that side. And the reason why she was able to rip it off that way is not because the screw wasn't holding, was because this was all bent and it had broken and came out of that. And that's why it was pulled out. Do you see what I mean? Okay, so now I've got to take the next screw, and I know just about how much to cut off, but do I want to make an assumption? I could cut off, 3/16 or whatever. Or I can put the whole thing back together with this one, put the screw in there, put the mark on there, and do all that kind of stuff. I don't have very much of the piece remaining. I could take a look at that, eyeball it, and know that I'm going to be about right. If I would have seen the thread, see, I still have to tighten that up, remember? I just have that little screw in there. It's not tight yet. And I didn't tighten it up all the way, because I want to have enough room to gently slide this one way or another if I have to line the door handles up. And if I put the sketch and trim on and do everything else, I could look at it as though it was complete, and then I could say, okay, this one's slightly off, take the whole thing apart and do it that way. I could do it either way, okay? But the sketching, I don't need to really put the sketch and trim back on. To do that, I could just put the handles on. The sketch and trim does not affect how the handles set on there. So I'll put those on there, and then after I get this one done, I'll line both of those up, make sure the handles are going straight, specifically the ones on the outside. Because as you're standing here outside the bathroom, I want those handles to be straight. How they come down at an angle, I want both of them lined up. Why? Because I can, and because they're going to be side by side out here, and that's what you're going to see. You know what I mean? Okay? So we're doing it. I'm sure glad I went to the store, because I was going to try to Joe Guyver it and try to put a different screw in there, and I didn't have the right type of nut, and I was thinking, how else could I do that? And I could have done exactly how these guys did this one here, right? But I didn't really want to do that over here for all the reasons why I had told you from before. So I'm glad I'm going the extra mile. And speaking of that, whenever you're doing a project, hey, it doesn't really take that much longer to do it right than to do it half-ass wrong or good enough or whatever. You know what I mean? Try to take the time, and yes, it's going to take a little bit more time to do it right than wrong or halfway, but it'll give you the satisfaction at the end of the day knowing you did the best that you could, and leave it at that. All right? Okay, so now I'm going out, cutting this screw and doing the same thing with this one that I just showed you right there. Now, before I cut that next one, I want to show you how I cut it. I just use a pair of pliers and a hacksaw blade. That's it. And you don't have to put this hacksaw blade in the actual hacksaw. If you do that, maybe you don't have much control. I got plenty of control as I'm going like this. Do you know what I mean? And I just let the saw do the work. This was a 32 teeth per inch. TPI is what that means. And the trick is you got to remember which direction to hold this. If you hold it the wrong way, your teeth are going the wrong way. So you have to look at this carefully to see which way the teeth are going. And if you noticed, this is less than 12 inches because I cut the tip off, because I use this when I'm cutting out electrical junction boxes in the wall to reach back in there to get the nails out and stuff. And I just use this and I just cut it out. And after a while, the tip bent and it started getting dull at the end. So I just cut that off. I thought, phooey on that. I'm not going to use a whole new blade for that. I'll just cut that off and keep using it. And this one's getting dull. I could cut it off from there and keep using it, you know, to do the same thing I was. But when this is full length, you'll see on here where there's an arrow, and half of the arrow blade, you know, half of the arrow end going up, and that'll tell you which direction to go. And basically that's all I did. And away you go. It's still going to take you a while to cut that off. And if you use a regular hacksaw blade in a hacksaw, you'll find that after a while it keeps stopping and starting, and you're having a hard time holding this. You could take some vice grips if you have them, clamp down on that baby and do it. But I find this works just as well, you know, so whatever you want to do. Plus, your hacksaw, you got two different types of hacksaw lengths. This one happens to be 12-inch blade. You'd be surprised. Some blades are longer than 12 inches, and so you got to make sure that when you're at the store you get the right blades, because I always like to get extra blades. And one time I bought extra blades and I thought, hey, what difference does it make? I didn't know, and I came back and they were too short. I had to run back to the store and get the longer blades to fit my actual hacksaw. And then I ended up having some smaller blades, and I thought, I know what I'll use those for. I'll use them just when I cut out electrical outlet boxes. And I just used this for the first time to cut out a round sealing box, plastic box, you know how they're nailed up there. I used this and cut the flanges on the inside. Worked out really good. All right, enough of that. Time to cut that screw off. And here's a little tip for you too. When I got something like this, I don't like to just rip this off, because then later if you want to know what size it was, you don't have this, maybe it got ripped off, or next time you're looking for it, you don't have all the screws. You got two screws and only one nut left because it got thrown around. So I just do that business. Pull out a screw, and then I can fish a nut. I can fish a nut out of that same little hole. Okay, right there, like that. Okay, now I've got 3 screws and 3 nuts left for another project. Those are never going to come out of there, and I'm ready to cut this off. Okay, I got this one almost ready, but you remember that side was bent and stuff, so I'm gonna put a little washer on it, and I just happen to have a little something here that I can use for a washer. But do you see how it's cut off right there? It's not really a washer that I got from the store. This is a ear to an old broken electrical duplex outlet. You know, the ears that fit over the drywall. If you've got a broken one, or if you got a bad one that you're replacing, I always like to break the ears off so I can use these as little washers. And when I look at the screw, because that was kind of bent down in there and stuff, and I banged it out a little bit, it's almost flush, but I think I can put this little screw washer in there. That's going to let this stick out a little bit further, but I think the escutcheon ring is still going to fit, so I'm going to try it. That'll give that a little bit more holding power. Okay, let's take a look. That washer, that little deal happened to fit right in there. Do you see the little edge of it right there where it was cut off from before? Fit right in there, didn't it? And see, the head really isn't sticking out that much. And I think, see, I think this is going to fit right down and snap right on there. Okay, I think it's going to. I think it's barely going to miss that. If anything, I might want to tighten that screw up a little bit further. But see, here's that other little screw that I put in, and the nut, and the threads are in there just a little bit. I've got to tighten that up a little bit, but I first want to line this up. I'm going to line that side up. I'm going to cinch it down to a certain extent, and I can do the same thing with this one, and then I'll put the door handles back on and see how it lines up.